I am Spartacus.
Number 2.
I kind of want to keep it at this point.
I am Spartacus 3.
Our Spartacus problem has been dealt with. Number 2 was identified as the real Spartacus. And I would like to take this moment to welcome you to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, not Spartacus. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me is an empty chair where we have dealt with the betrayer, and also a Chris Figgs over here. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Once Saul decides to come back in frame, then I will let him do what he wants to amongst themselves. Oh, hey, there's a Saul. What's up, buddy?
I was having a stretch. What's up, everybody?
So a couple things to go ahead and catch up on. 2 things. One, Chris was not here last week. So welcome back, Chris.
Hi.
Welcome back.
And we will be getting your opinion on the Gran Turismo stuff that you wanted to talk about and kind of the overall topic, just as part of kind of the community stake. We'll kind of lump it in together there, give you a chance to give your spiel alongside everyone else with GT7, but also the larger conversation of the type of DRM tactics that it employs. But the other thing is, I would like to go ahead and say that last week you may notice that we did not have a video version of the episode, and that is because the video was corrupt, because the service that we use went down during recording, and I was only able to salvage the audio, which took a while. And when I finally figured that out, I was in a rush to put the episode out. So you may have noticed last week that I said that I would cut me going and checking for my dogs, the dead air that came with that, and that did not happen. So I apologize. Hope that it made for fun listening, and I'll try and be a little bit better. Hopefully that doesn't happen again today. But going to go ahead and get going with this show the time-honored way, and that is a good check-in on Chris since he was not here last week. First, Chris, what have you been playing lately?
Well, let's see. I guess there's 2 weeks of games. So Elden Ring, and then I've been playing a lot of Slay the Spire, Grand Theft Auto 5 Enhanced and Extended Edition.
Enhanced and Extended? Is that actually what it's called?
That's definitely what they were calling it, right? It wasn't a GTA 5 EE for a while.
I don't know. But anytime I hear the word extended, I kind of think of those old Extends commercials that would come on when you were watching TV at 3 a.m. You'd be watching like Spike or something, and then it'd be like, here's Jerry. Jerry's happy because he used Extends.
Apparently those pills used to make you like a Silent Hill character down there, so.
What does that even mean?
Means it would give you a pyramid head. Oh my gosh. All right, moving along. So Grand Theft Auto 5. I heard you say that you felt like you were mostly through Grand Theft Auto 5 again. Is that still the case? Yeah, I'm on the third.
How long is Grand Theft Auto 5?
I feel like it's long, but I feel like I've gotten through it pretty quickly too.
Do you think it's because you know what's going on, so you're kind of cutting out time by knowing what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, probably. But I think there's a lot of like, I'm not doing I'm just going to murder for an hour. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of just playing the story and doing like the side stuff. So it's definitely possible. We'll see. Debating going back for that platinum, but I don't know. Bro.
What's crazy is there's people that already have the platinum, and I don't understand how, because if I'm not mistaken, trophy, are they?
Yeah, but it's weird because I auto popped some trophies, but not other ones. It was odd.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. All right, Saul, check in on you. What you been playing, buddy?
Still been playing a little bit of Triangle Strategy. Not so much this week. Like one night a week this week.
Sure.
I've been reading a lot of manga, and I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring. Actually, not really a lot of Elden Ring. Played like Monday, Tuesday, and like yesterday. It's been a good chunk of it yesterday playing.
Yeah, it's still just kind of rolling through now that you've beaten it. I mean, do you find the game still has like a strong luster for you, or is it kind of backed off a little since you've
like I'm
beaten
still playing through. I'm playing on my new character. I'm playing as a sorcerer, and yesterday there's a new kind of magic in the game called Madness, which is like Frenzy from Bloodborne. Weirdly enough.
God, I hate frenzy.
And you get to use it on enemies now.
Oh, that's okay. That's cool.
And in an odd way.
But enemies can still use it on you, right?
In this game, yes, they can.
Yeah.
And me and Seth literally yesterday, he came over after we played disc golf, and we sat there for like 3 hours and made a build and kind of ran through the first part of the game with that build, and it was pretty fun.
So has he beaten the game?
No, he is on the last boss.
I knew he was very close.
He hasn't. He is. I thought he had beat the last boss, but no, he had fought him once, and he hasn't gone back to play him again. Yeah, but
I don't know how you keep doing that.
What?
Lifting up your.
Oh, wow. I don't know either.
Either way,
yeah, that's been it this week for what I've been playing. What have you been playing?
Gran Turismo 7. I don't think. Oh, I played some Destiny. Destiny 2. I hopped on since I've beaten Witch Queen. I hopped on and did the of Worms and Queens or whatever the quest was called, where you get Parasite. Cool quest. I need to go back. It's not even that I'm not wanting to play Destiny. I am, but I've been just so caught up in Gran Turismo. I beat Gran Turismo's campaign, if you want to call it that, the cafe system, which unlocks a bunch of cars for you and tracks and everything, and all the events and championships. I beat that at like 2 a.m. Friday or Saturday morning, gosh. Technically. Yeah, before we went and disc golfed.
Yeah.
So I did that. And I started doing some trophy cleanup and looking at some of the online stuff. And I say trophy cleanup as if I'm even remotely close. I'm not. I sent Chris a picture because he's like, it'd be crazy if you did. And I've gotten a couple of trophies I thought would be harder to get than they ended up being. And I got them naturally, where I wasn't even actually aiming for them. So that was kind of cool. Chris, I think the last time I sent it to you, I was at like 57 or 58%. I think right now I'm at 67%.
Oh,
so I'm going through. The long run gets to a point where you've got to keep driving a ton and you got to get a ton of money. That's essentially what, like, the point where I'm at, where to get the trophies, you really got to play. It's like I've got to buy 3 legendary cars that would have been used to win Le Mans, or I can't remember, or the Nürburgring 24-hour versions. And those are in the legacy cars, and they rotate through, so you have to find them randomly and then buy them, and they cost a ton of money. So it's kind of you got to wait until you see them roll through and then buy them. And when I say tons of money, sometimes like 30 million. So I've got a lot of racing to do, but I've got a lot of racing to do for all the mileage trophies anyway. So yeah, I've been having a great time with it. Saul finally got to try the setup.
Yeah, that's fun.
And for all of you went from kind of being like, this looks interesting, to seeming like y'all were kind of like, this is pretty cool. Big Seth, I think, surprised me the most.
Yeah, well, see, I've always liked sim games. I tend to like the Forza Motorsport sim versions better than Gran Turismo's, because it is a little more forgiving. From what I remember, at least, I agree. It's been
of the times I haven't played a ton of Forza.
It's been literally since 360 since I played Motorsport. But yeah, I just
same actually.
I if I had a setup like that, I'd be more inclined to play it. But didn't even finish Forza Horizon just because racing games they don't hold my attention as well as they used to.
Yeah, you did pretty well. Even first time on the wheel. I mean, you kind of had to understand the power and how to turn. But by the time that you were doing all right. I knew when I put you on that race, I was like, they're not going to even remotely get close to any of the racers. There's just way too many turns, and you don't understand the car's power. But it's a good time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Chris, you still playing Gran Turismo 7 at all, or you kind of just let it go with everything else you're playing?
I let it go with everything else I'm playing. I want to play it. It's not like I don't want to play. I just got other stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find a way, because now I've done exactly what I was worried about, where there's so many games coming out, and I have Gran Turismo 7 that I'm still wanting to play. I have Elden Ring that I don't really want to play. Like, I do, but it's not calling to me in any way. And I have Destiny 2, which similar, I guess. I have more want to play Destiny 2 than Elden Ring currently, but not just a massive amount more. And then Ghostwire came out. And I'm going to get Ghostwire, and I'm about to just go ahead and buy it, but I guess, I don't know. I think Ghostwire is probably going to jump in front of everything else because it's such a shorter game. Like, part of Elden Ring's thing is everyone else is like, oh, it's like 100 hours and you're going to find all these things. And that's not really a big pull for me right now. I think I'd rather just play something alongside Gran Turismo 7 that's not that long. And I would imagine that Ghostwire is probably going to sit somewhere in that 20 to 30 hour range. We'll see. If it's shorter, I don't mind. So we'll see. But I think from there, we're going to go ahead and move into the community's take before we do the news. And the community's take, of course, is based off last week's episode. And we were looking at Gran Turismo 7 as a starter conversation for the game itself, but also in the long run, its form of DRM. So the question in play was, with Gran Turismo 7 moving toward an always online setup, potentially ruining its legacy for players to revisit in 20 years should the servers close, what are your thoughts on this strange form of DRM in games that could exist offline otherwise? And by that, of course, I mean games that don't inherently seem connected in any way that makes you feel connected, like a Destiny or something like that. Chris, I'm going to give you the podium to stand on for a second and kind of express any of the things that I know you listened to the episode. So anything that you feel like we may not have covered, or just a second for you to kind of give your thoughts to the audience.
I don't know. It was nothing crazy. I think I don't mind the DRM and the always online stuff. I don't think that's an issue at all, but I don't like.
Well, why out of curiosity? Just so I kind of understand your standpoint there.
Because it's just, that's how games are made. It's an online game. It's a leaderboard is integrated into everything. Like, it's inherently online. Even if you're racing by yourself, it's still an online game. It's just asynchronous at that point. So, like, I don't. Well,
I think the difference is that leaderboards have existed in Gran Turismo since 5. And those games did not require you to be online to do so. I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that there's anything about those games that make you feel inherently connected.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to feel connected. You know what I mean? I don't feel connected all the time in Elden Ring, but if I turn, and that's a bad example because you can't play it
has offline mode.
But either way, during normal gameplay, you're online. You have to be a specific type of person to turn that off, which is okay, but I don't.
So the bigger question, and this is actually, I guess, my biggest form here, is what it does to games later. So say 10 years from now you want to play, and don't get me wrong, Elden Ring has been a huge success. It'll probably still be around, but let's just look at the potential. 10 years from now, if you want to play Elden Ring, and Elden Ring was an online only game, and it did not have an offline mode, and there was no way, if the game couldn't connect to a server, it won't load, like a Destiny or 2 or something like that, or in the case of Gran Turismo 7, Gran Turismo, then 10 years from now, you can't play that game again, despite the fact that in all other ways, it would probably hold up. My example I used on Twitter the other day, like literally yesterday, while I was talking to someone, is if I wanted to, Gran Turismo 4, I could put that into my PS3 right now to play the PS2 version. I could put my disc in, play Gran Turismo 4 to my heart's content. And that game came out 18 years ago.
Yeah, but why would you ever want to play Gran Turismo 4? It looks so ugly when we have Gran Turismo 7 coming out.
Calm down there, Jim Ryan. Sorry, Chris Ryan.
Oh, you make me sound even whiter than I already do.
Hey, yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, we have no, I'm not going to say it. I was going to mess with you specifically for something I know you hate, but you know what?
Yeah, don't say
That's not what we're here to do. I know you will. I know you will, and I hate that word too.
It's awful. But
I guess my overall thing is really looking at it. There are times I do want to play older games, and we'll go up a generation, we'll go to Gran Turismo 5 because that game was connected online. I think 4 you could still play online, but not nearly as it built in. PS3, you have all this. GT5, GT6 are both online based games that you can get on, race with each other. They're multiplayer and all that. And I could still go back and play them separate from that should they choose to close the servers for that, which they probably have. And I could play them without any issue. In 18 years from now, unless Gran Turismo 7 servers are still up, which they very well might be, but I think time and time again, time has shown that companies don't want to keep servers up for games for no reason. You're left with the fact that if they just close the servers, that game is no longer working. And, some people go, well, at least have it to where whenever they go to close the servers for the game, they put out a final patch for the game. that allows you to essentially play the game offline. And I would hope that would actually be something that they would do. But that's the real detriment of that form of DRM to me, when it's a game that is not inherently based around that. The experience of the game is not inherently based around that, unlike the experience of a Destiny. And I think
but
that's part of it.
Isn't the game inherently based around that? The car prices fluctuate with the market. Again, like, make your leaderboard argument, but that's part of it. I don't know. I feel like the game is inherently connected to the internet. Just because you don't feel it 100% of the time doesn't mean that.
But what I mean is, when the internet is not around, those things should have a default that they can fall back onto.
Yeah, and maybe they will, but that's not how the game is built today.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that to be an issue, because there is no offline mode. And again, that comes down to the bigger argument is about what happens later when these things are not in. If they change the legacy car prices to be static prices that never change, that doesn't really negatively impact the game in such a way that you would never want to play it again. It does enhance the experience. I'll give it that. When you're online, it does add that extra thing of like, oh, it's cool that the prices of the car change based off supply demand. The leaderboards show in real time, which all of them have done that. So, but with those things in mind, it's like, yeah, I get that, but I don't think they're so inherently part of the game's general moment-to-moment gameplay that it is necessary in any form. But they've pushed the issue to make it necessary.
I don't know. I just think in the current age, almost everything has some sort of online. That I would argue an Elden Ring you're going to play in 10 years when the servers are down is not the same game that I'm playing right now. So it doesn't, that, like, even though it has an offline mode, it's not the same game. It's just not. I can make that argument with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all of those. Those messages are so inherently part of the experience and almost essential. I don't think playing without them is playing the same game.
I would be very hard pressed to ever say the messages are like necessary or whatever word you just used.
I think that's. But 90% of the world building of those games is the messages, in my opinion.
Yeah, I pretty much. I will occasionally read messages, but I've never found them to be changing of anything in those games. When I think about those games, I don't think about the messages. When I think about what I loved about Bloodborne, that has absolutely zero to do with messages or anything. It has entirely to do.
I'm not sitting here and saying like I like Elden Ring because the messages exist. I'm saying that though that's part of the thing. It's part of showing like
I agree that when it's off. For you, right? For someone who's already playing online, 20 years from now, if the servers are off and you play the offline version, it is going to be a different experience than what you played. That is true. Mm-hmm. But it's still an experience that's pretty akin to what you played.
Brett, there's just how are my children going to know to try fingers butthole?
Butthole.
How?
It's very important.
How can you even play Elden Ring without trying fingers in a butthole? How?
Whereas I think a game like Destiny, where it's like, oh, strikes or raids or something, you go to this idea of like, well, raids are entirely based around the fact that you're playing with other people. And I don't even know what you would do to Destiny outside of just making the campaign single player. That's the most you could do, which would be you cutting 90% of the game for the 10%. Because technically, I soloed the majority of Witch Queen by myself, and there's nothing about that requires you to have somebody else from a gameplay perspective. So you could do that, but then 90% of what makes Destiny is gone. And I think that's my inherent difference between the two. I think when you look at an MMO is a game that's about playing with other people in the long run. So if you take that element out and you remove the always online, it is a deeply different game that probably can't even literally stand if you tried to remove all the online elements. Whereas if you just said Gran Turismo, let's take the fluctuating prices out and let's take the leaderboards out, and the sport mode is optional as it should be, right? Then nothing about that game is inherently different, in my opinion, at least. I don't think that anything that. I don't think if you had an always offline version and an always online version, I think if you put Gran Turismo 6 and Gran Turismo 7 beside each other, and you ask somebody which one, they didn't know any different, you ask, hey, which one of these is always online? I don't think anybody would be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just used to that being a thing. Like the online doesn't bother me at all. I had a bigger issue with the microtransactions. Like I don't like that they changed the prices after reviews to be egregious. Like I think that's really crappy. Especially after I kind of went to bat and was like, the microtransactions are not that bad.
Well, just to be clear, they didn't change the pricing of the microtransactions. I know you're not saying that, but to clarify for anybody listening, they changed reward values in game, like we talked about last week, which would therefore potentially push you to buying microtransactions quicker than you would have otherwise done.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else you want to say, then we will move on to everyone else's thoughts.
I am good.
All right. So first one that came through was from our longtime listener and patron, Jehudi MD. He says, my thoughts are that these practices are shady at best. I more wonder if anybody supports this practice. On the one hand, having a system like this ensures continued revenue for the developer, which everybody and their mother is after these days. Submodels left and right. Look at the recent GTA Plus, which we'll talk about later. But on the other hand, it's strange for a racing game to exist only online. I remember the days where online was an option in a game, and options are always a good thing. I pretty much agree with that. From my standpoint, I definitely am not saying that it shouldn't be online to some degree. I think it's fun that it is. I've been having a blast beating people who I'm friends with time and then dumb Twitter gloating about it just for them to come back around and destroy my time. It's a good little social element to it. Let's see. Rude Days 93, another patron. He says, with DRM, there is a line I'm willing to go with it. For instance, I'm fine with a once a month internet check-in and having to be connected to the internet to start your console setup. The patches and updates these consoles need, I would say, are a necessity almost. And just in my opinion, I think almost everyone who can afford these consoles can find a way to hook up to the internet for one day at least. And if you can't, well, as Don Matrick would say, we have a console for you. It's called the Nintendo Switch. Go enjoy your 720p, 30 frames per second games. Sorry, Nintendo fans. Always online, though, is, I think, a step too far, especially for games with a single-player mode. There really is no good reason to not have an offline mode if you have single-player content. So, one of the things I find weird here, I personally think having a machine that requires internet to do anything is kind of pointless because it's like, why should I buy? You can turn a phone on, and phones, the benefit of phones really are that they're connected, right? But my daughter has my old phone. There is the only internet connectivity she can potentially have is through Wi-Fi, and yet that phone totally works in and of itself without any form of internet. I think that making something that as soon as you open up and plug in, it's like, yeah, I can't do my job until you connect to the internet, is an inherently worse setup than something that says, I can do what I need to do, but if you want a better experience, you should probably hook me up to the internet. Am I alone in that? I mean, I don't know. I thought that the way that originally Xbox One handled, and still does, where you have to connect to the internet to even use your console, is ultimately worse version. I mean, is it the end of the world for me? No.
I see your point, and I kind of agree, but I think internet at this point, at least in the United States, I'll even clarify more. Most of the United States is so ubiquitous that this is just not an issue, and especially like, why wouldn't you connect your PS5 to the internet? Like, what reason do you have?
Well, what reason do you have to do it? You know what I mean? I think the exact opposite argument works. And a good example I'll use is actually my dad. I haven't talked to him in the sense of, I don't know that he's aware that Gran Turismo 7 is always online, and he doesn't have internet where he lives. So he would have to, I don't even know if it would work. He would have to try and use his phone as a hotspot at best to connect the system to it. But I think my dad could buy a PlayStation 5, take it home, plug it in, put any other. He could put Gran Turismo. Well, he can't actually Gran Turismo because there's no not always online one from PS4 or PS5. So, but he could do that with any other game. He could take a NASCAR game. He could take anything, put it in, play it, and never know the internet was required. Nor would he be missing any experience for what he's looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think the opposite argument works. I don't think.
What do you mean?
Like I feel like you saying like, well, why do you have to be connected? Because that's how it's made. Like that would be like me going.
The argument is why is it made that way when it doesn't impact the thing? Like there should be.
It does impact. It impacts the entire user experience of the PS5 to be online.
Well, I mean, it impacts it, but it doesn't render it unusable. And I guess the difference between a PS5 and an Xbox Series X right now is that when you have a Series X, you have to connect before it does anything else. I'm 90% sure. I'm pretty sure I remembered that with my Series S because it's a hangover from one. They still have it where there. You have to check in before you can do anything else. And it wouldn't surprise me if, much like the Xbox One, for it to be put into offline mode, you have to connect to the internet first to then tell your system to go in offline mode. Whereas I think the difference is that if my dad went to a store, only use my dad as an example of people who live in places with no internet. The difference is that as soon as they get home and excited to play this thing, who are more consumer, more typical standard consumer, would get home, plug one in and plug the other one in. And on one hand, PS5, they would never know that, there's nothing really missing that keeps me from being able to use this console without internet. But the moment you plug the Xbox in, you go, I can't even use it until I find a way to connect to the internet. I think that that's the inherent question there, is that one treats it as you'll get a better experience if you hook it up, but if you never hook it up to internet, you'll never know the difference. Whereas immediately Xbox says you have to know the difference because we won't let you do anything until you connect to the internet.
I don't know, man. That to me sounds like
Am I dying on a wheel?
Problem.
Am I dying on a weird hill?
No, I get what you're saying, but. And maybe this is an argument that I guess is hyper specific to me because I believe this, but everything you're saying sounds to me like a consumer who didn't do their research and is now upset because they didn't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would you go and not check that kind of stuff?
Well, to that extent, again, there really is, unless, and I'm willing to find out that there apparently is or isn't. But I see no reason why you would even design the Xbox in such a way that it has to connect to the internet first, when you can make it to where the default is no internet, and then go on. You're more accommodating to a larger degree of consumers. You have a product that works out of the box, and you can do the old Todd Howard. It just works, even though it clearly doesn't. But point being is, I don't think many consumers, definitely when you have an industry that's as long as gaming is in the grand scheme of things. My dad was playing on Nintendo NES. For him to suddenly find that is an odd thing. I think if you take it off of the macro level of the system and go down to games, it makes more sense for a game to be always online, because it's like, well, at that point, games can clearly sit there and show, and you can go, well, I really want to play that game, but it's a much smaller thing than an entire system that can't do anything until it's reached online. Now, the saving grace for all of them is that at least for the Xbox, there's a way for you to make it work when you're not connected to the internet. Like if it was that you had to be connected at all times, I think that would be terrible, because then your internet goes down and you just can't play.
I would also say that I don't know that this is a thing on the Series X. Series S is an all digital console, so you'd obviously be online.
Of course,
to use it.
Yeah, of course. That's a fair point. But Series X is the question there.
I would also make the argument that making everything offline and setting it up an entire vertical of the console that way would be catering to a significantly smaller sect of people than you think it is.
Even if
you're arguing for 1% of the console market,
I think it's larger than that. I think you'd be surprised. Let's look at your 1%. If the people who set it up day one and connected to the internet never know the difference, then why wouldn't you accommodate to the lowest common denominator when you're not putting any extra steps on the people who do have internet? What you are doing for the people that don't have internet is putting extra steps onto them, steps that may be harder for them to actually meet.
I get what you're saying. We can move off this in a second. I'll just give my last point. And I think this is the equivalent of me being like, why doesn't Tesla put a gas tank in their car? Because some guy in the middle of nowhere, Texas, can't get an electric plug at his house. Why is that guy buying a Tesla? That's my point.
Okay, so in this case, you're saying the lowest common denominator is someone who doesn't have a home with power?
Sure.
Okay.
My point is that you're asking for them to do something they don't want to do to cater to a very small sect of the population.
No. This would be what you're really doing. Hold on. No, this would be what you're really doing. You're comparing someone who doesn't have, they live somewhere that has power, right? In the sense of the console. You're saying that my dad, who lives in a place that there is no internet service provider besides one that really still doesn't work, it's a satellite one. The difference there is that he doesn't have any reasonable or reliable connection of internet that he can even do. His phone gets terrible service. Half time I call him, he literally can't even get my calls. The difference there is that your Tesla thing is positing that if we were to translate this argument over, then you're saying that someone who lives in a place that has no potential power at all is looking at buying a Tesla, because that's what the comparison point would be. If it's that you have to have electricity, then you're saying that someone is living in a house with no possible way for any electricity to ever reach their house. There's no company that has any power lines that go out there. There's nothing. Is that that's the argument you're making?
I'm saying I don't that own
seems
a
like
Tesla,
a huge
but I'm fairly positive I would have to get a specific thing in my house for my Tesla. Anyway,
no, your Tesla comes with a cord that you plug into the wall.
Okay, move on. I'm over
Actually,
it.
I don't think Teslas do come with that cord, by the way.
Yeah,
even if they don't, it's a cord that you can buy, and they
but
plug into a I think it's a 210 outlet.
You have to buy it. You have to buy internet. I'm just being devil's advocate.
You know what Tesla in real life did? He died. Let's move on because the conversation is not dead.
I actually created a pretty cool magic machine too.
Or he cloned himself.
Have you heard those do music?
What?
Have you heard the?
Well, it was David Bowie in the Prestige, so yes. I'm dead serious. David
Was
Bowie
he really?
played Nikolai Tesla in Prestige. The movie's fantastic. Awesome. You still need to watch it.
Either way,
it's the best Christopher Nolan movie.
The little Tesla wireless electricity machines.
What's the first best?
They can do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Dunkirk.
I actually haven't seen Dunkirk, so I can't say anything about that.
All right, let's see.
I saw like the first 10 minutes and it was pretty good. But
we got a couple more here. We have Shafe Dog who says, "Yeah, online only sucks. On the bright side, while I do sort of expect them to eventually attempt a workaround, those like me that have not purchased yet are sure to get it cheap soon. Also wanted to offer my input for last week's community take about game mechanics that I hate. The boss stomp mechanic in Destiny is trash and lazy game design, in my opinion.
It always has been, though.
Yep. Always has been. The Lord Corgi, all of you guys are patrons, so thank you. He says, I think if a game was historically not an online-only game, then it definitely is weird to change it to a game that requires an online collection to play. A connection is what he meant. But that being said, don't mind DRM if the game is explicitly stated to require an online connection to play, but I do think there should be offline modes available in the case of server shutdowns. Look, now it's Chris who has a dog barking, not me.
Sadly, there's nothing I can do about it.
All right, so I think I'm gonna grab one off of Twitter and one off of Facebook. So Twitter comes from Sweet Gran Turismo Jones, our buddy Ryan. He says, just praying games like it and the Division game get last day patches that allow the game to be discontinued, servers shut down, while becoming an offline game with all multiplayer disabled. And I think depending on the game, that might work. I mean, the Division and its choice of open world and how you move throughout it, I do think is an easier thing than something like Destiny to move toward an always offline mode. But who knows? That might be the way to go. The one off of Facebook I'm going to go with is from Joey McPherson. He says, I really hate it as pretty much everyone else, which as we're hearing in this is not entirely true. Just like with the pre-launch of Xbox One, everyone lost their minds because we all know where that type of power goes, and it's not to us by that I think he means the consumers. I'm truly happy Sony didn't go that way because I don't think as of right now we would have offline games or the ability to play the system offline. I also agree with what you were saying. Steam should do on letting Steam users trade or sell their games. That needs to happen, even if there was say a $1 fee to do it, or something where the fee was split to Steam and the developer, just something so developers have so people have the right to do what they want with their game that they bought, like a physical copy. Yeah, I mean, clearly the second part I agree with for the most part. I don't necessarily know about a fee because, I mean, as much as developers may hate it, when you buy a game, it's yours. When you buy a physical copy of a game, it's yours. As so long as you have the disc and the machine needed to play it. I don't necessarily know that it makes sense to say, like, hey, if I want to sell my game to my neighbor, then I have to give the developers $5. But, you know, I mean, I think if it's yours and you have the right to do whatever you want to with it, as you should, because as all other industries currently have it, then you should be able to say, yeah, I just want to give it to him or sell it to him or whatever without necessarily having to give the developer a fee, even though I get the idea of it's nice to support the developers. But it wouldn't go to the developers. It would go to the publishers, just to clarify that difference. Do you guys think if Sony would have followed suit with Microsoft going into the PS4, that we would have always online and the DRM that Xbox was doing? Or do you think that consumer backlash still would have pushed both of them out of it? Out of curiosity. You're muted, Chris.
They wouldn't have a choice, I think. When all companies decide something, consumers wouldn't have a choice. Like, they know that backlash wouldn't affect anything.
Well,
because they're going to pick Xbox or PlayStation, and then, they both did something I don't like. You still only have two choices.
Well, no, not necessarily, right? I mean, I agree that that's definitely the overarching feel, but then Nintendo can say well, guess what, guys? We've got the Wii U that doesn't require all of those things. And then it just becomes, are the consumers going to take the knee and just, bow to the whims and do it? Or would they do like what they did with the Sonic movie and just be like, we're not going to support this until you change the decision made?
No, I don't. I think that would.
This is more of like a consumer psychology that we're asking about. Is
from a weird way, a little bit, but I really think that, like, if both Google and Apple came out and said that they no longer include microphones on their phones anymore, that you can only text on them, of course you're going to have people outraged. But the people who love Google and the people who love Apple are going to end up still buying Apple or Google because the competitor that they would turn to is offering the same thing.
Yeah, but I think the one thing about this that's still essentially missing in that situation is that the way that markets work is that people would go, oh, there's an opening and I have a way to get good PR and better business by quickly doing the exact opposite of what these other people are doing now. Well, my question was between Sony and Xbox.
Right, but
Nintendo is still in that opportunity, and Nintendo can still come out and say, hey, guys, here's Switch, and Switch doesn't have it.
But even then, if you're not a Nintendo fan at all, if you only prefer PlayStation, or like for me, Nintendo has always been supplemental. I was Xbox. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a thing. It was just what all my friends played on. It wasn't like a massive like preference to me. I did not hate PlayStation, but when Xbox made that choice, it was like, oh, cool. I guess I'll see what PlayStation has to offer because I don't like that. But if PlayStation would have made that choice too, I wouldn't have gone to PlayStation because at that point, what is there to offer? That's the same service.
Yeah, but then the market goes PC, right? And that's essentially what I mean. There's always an out, and it almost makes you wonder. Like, do y'all remember what were they actually called? Steam boxes? What were the ones that like Alienware were making and stuff? Where it was essentially a console,
Steam box,
in the sense of being is Steam box okay? Because there was Steam Deck, but that was the streaming thing, if I remember correctly.
Steam Deck is the handheld.
Yeah,
Hold on, what was it called?
Well, Stream Deck is a is that Elgato?
Maybe.
Yeah. There's Elgato Stream Deck. It's what you had over there.
What was it? What was the thing called that you plugged into your TV and it was basically like a
stream box.
Chromecast?
A stream box.
Well, was it called a stream box? It was a Steam product. I remember.
a Steam box. Not Stream.
No, the Steam boxes I'm talking about, just to clarify between the two, and you might still already be there, is that there were one that was essentially like consoles that had pre-built-in specs that you'd play off of. Then Steam had like a little $50 thing you could buy that was all it did was Steam.
I think that was a Stream box.
I'm wondering what it was called.
Because see, Blaze got the Stream Deck confused with the handheld.
Yeah, Steam Link is what it was called. There we go. Either way, point being.
But here's the thing: if we'll go back to just a phone analogy, so that I could say it like this too, is that if I like Android and you like Apple, and they don't make microphones. Well, it doesn't matter if OnePlus exists because you don't care about them. You're still going to buy what you're used to. Most consumers don't shop around like that.
If you change things that drastically, I think most would take the opportunity.
Most
to be
consumers
like, I'm
would
go
not.
off.
It's the same reason why we got the Halo show. Because most consumers don't care about the Halo lore, so they're going to appeal to the most common denominator.
I agree in the sense that, but that's I think it's different because it's not saying that it's inherently changing an industry in the sense of a show, right? You're not inherently changing the gaming industry
you're still
or
taking
the
liberties
show,
with things, and you can get away with it because it doesn't matter to the most common denominator.
Yeah.
The most common denominator of phones, if you buy Apple and you only buy Apple, you may be technical like me. I buy Apple simply because now I like the ecosystem. It works really well. I also have a Kindle tablet that I've rooted with Android. I am well versed in Android. I don't have a massive preference to one or the other. I just landed on Apple. But if Apple and Android were to come out and say no microphones, I'm not going to. I would be the one to seek out and say, well, what's OnePlus have? What's Huawei have?
Well, yeah, because the difference there is you're saying Android, but Android is not.
Well, I'm saying Google specifically.
Yeah, sure.
But like, let's say
then you have Samsung. Samsung is a very popular one. They can come up and say, well, guess what, guys? We still do. And then I guarantee you, consumers even that love those would go, Samsung's a big enough name, and they still offer this thing. I'd be willing to try it.
I would be curious if the people who loved.
I would love to see a study be done.
Yeah, I would be curious if the people who loved iPhone and the people who loved to be fair, I guess I should be doing Apple and Samsung because the amount of people that use Samsung is almost equivalent to the amount of people that use Apple.
Well, actually, it's more.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, Samsung. Actually, Huawei has the high. It's Huawei, Samsung, Apple.
Okay, well, either way,
in terms of
I know
share.
Google is definitely not in any comparison to Apple or
no, not even remotely close.
So it'd be like that.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you can have people like some people who use iPhones, like 45-year-old adults don't care about phones at all. They don't use iPhone. They don't know what a OnePlus or a Huawei or a Sam. Some of them don't even know Samsung make phones. They don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. So yeah, they're just going to still buy the iPhone and have to make do. I'll go get a home phone. I'll go get a Cricket phone.
You know where I think the logic flaw in that particular thing is, or at least I won't say logic.
I mean,
but
you can pick apart my argument all you want in this situation, but the ending real situation is like the same.
An example of why I think that's not the case is seeing people burn their Nikes and throw their Nikes away and burn their Carhartt and go find other things. It doesn't matter how much you love something, realistically, you will always try and find something that fits the need if you really disagree with what they're doing.
Right, but that's not the conversation we're having. The conversation we're having is that if the other competitors change to go with it.
Well, my question was only Sony and Xbox. There is still PC, Switch, and any other person that wanted to come into the thing.
Only if Sony or Microsoft would they still get away with it? And I'm answering that question by saying yes, because the fans of Sony and Microsoft, the hardcore fans, won't care. They'll make uproars about it, but if Sony does not change it, they're not going to have a mass amount of people boycott them. Look at Battlefront 2. That's the perfect example of the most outrage that a video game has ever had, still sold millions.
Yeah, but then player interaction with that game was down until they changed it.
Doesn't matter. They still made millions of dollars.
But again, the difference there comes down to some of these things weren't known until later. I think
they weren't. Everything about this game that was learned from the beta.
I know.
And that's where the outcry came from, was the beta.
And promises that they would fix it.
And they never did.
And they didn't. I know.
And they still all
Which
that
I guess,
money.
to your argument, if Sony came out and said, hey, we're doing this too, and then said, oh, guys, we've heard you and we're going to work on this, but then still launch the console with always online only,
it doesn't
then
matter.
Fair.
Well, here's the thing. Because the general consumer, microphone on a phone, that's a little extreme.
Yeah,
because it's not taking the phone away. Let's say it took Wi-Fi out. Mm-hmm. That makes more sense. The average consumer of the phones that care about that kind of thing are just going to look at that as this is the way that phones are now adapting. That's the same way that people that Microsoft fans looked at it, of like, I guess this is the future that didn't fight back against or didn't have qualms with it. This is the future of gaming. We're going to have to get used to it, which, to be fair, they're not wrong.
As someone
because we still see it to this day implemented by Sony when they said they would not.
Yeah, I think to a degree we're just putting our own. I say that to a degree because you don't have the same thing either. Much like you I love PlayStation and I buy most of what they're going to do. But I'll tell you right now that if they were going to do that,
because you are technically adept, you don't fall in the 1%er that I'm talking about.
Exactly.
You don't fall into the common denominator.
Well, I don't think that the common denominator is hyper fans either. That's my thing. I think if you look at casual consumers who just had a preference for PlayStation,
but they're dedicated fans.
Yeah, but even then, I I tell you, all sorts of people that in my mind, and of course it's anecdotal, but I would guarantee that if I went to a ton of people who were more casual consumers but still played games, whenever this PlayStation thing had happened and said PlayStation's doing what Xbox is doing and you can't buy used games without paying some extra fee, then it would be balked against. And a part of why I think part of the way I still think that is because people rallied against online passes.
Well, here's the thing though.
And that could have just as easily been seen as this is the way the industry is going. And at that time, not only did PlayStation do it, EA did it, Activision did it, literally every publisher did it. And everyone as a whole said, no.
Yeah, that's one of those rare occurrences though of a feature that did not get used when everybody decided, yes, go back. Go ask anybody.
But you couldn't play online games without them. And then people still as a whole were able to push people back for them to go, it would make more sense and we'd make more money and have less issues.
But it's not it's a game by game basis that not everybody plays in multiplayer games.
True.
Where this is a console specific feature that you're shunned out of.
Not everyone plays consoles.
Go back. We're talking about consoles though.
Okay. In the other case, I'm talking about multiplayer games. If even if we stay within the context of what we're doing, the multiplayer games and people who fought back against that thing, despite the fact that there were people that played single player games, is the same thing here.
But the amount
for the people that play consoles,
what I'm saying is
I think it would be sown for other things.
The amount of people that play multiplayer games that's not in the same ballpark. That's not in the same sport as the amount of people who play consoles.
I mean,
so
market at large from people
that's why
who
I went
play
with phones.
Sure,
because everybody has a phone. Most households have consoles.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, yeah, hi. What?
Nothing. Your side just led me to believe that at some point we're just going to have to concede to each other's arguments and agree to disagree.
No, you guys have just been moving goalposts this whole time.
I don't feel like I have, and I'm pretty sure Saul doesn't feel like he has.
You just did.
You literally just
How?
did.
You're
talking about consoles.
Yeah, we're talking about consoles. I brought up phones because that's comparable to consoles. You're bringing up games, which are not.
Okay, but from the get-go, I did not intend for this to entirely be about consoles. My point was games as a whole, games industry. With the games industry as a whole,
but you didn't phrase the question that way at all.
What I said is Sony had agreed with Microsoft to do this. Do you think we would have that form of DRM right now? Now, I could see how it's really easy to look at that specifically through consoles.
But that's not how... Don't say that that's how you look at it. That's how the conversation's being looked at from consoles. You're bringing up a console-based
I guess,
issue.
but from first moment, I said people will go to PC. I mean, pretty early on, I established that I'm looking at games industry as a whole.
But see, that's the thing. That's what I disagree on. I disagree on that if Sony said that they're not having a controller, it's like headphones. Okay. When the headphones stop coming with phones, people eventually, or headphone ports, people eventually are like, we'll go to Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you are. Most Samsung phones, they went an iteration without having a headphone jack too, because they adapted.
I actually don't know that. But
well, and here's the thing. And
I know for a while they
controller,
kept it.
They did. And let's say for a controller, let's say they didn't come with a controller.
Okay.
Ask any person.
A good example for your thing right now is actually phones not coming with chargers.
I mean that too. Yeah, there's outcry about it, but then everybody did it anyways. And there's still some niche phone developers that do come with charging bricks.
Of course,
most of them don't.
Yeah.
Look at what Nintendo did. They don't come with chargers either for some of their stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but not only that, but ask any person who casually plays games what they think about DRM that Microsoft unveiled in 2014. They'll have no clue what you're talking about.
You're probably right on that.
I'm 100% right on that.
Yeah,
they'll have no clue because they're not kept in the loop.
Part of the problem is that we're too tapped into
that's
what happens in the industry.
That's the whole point of the conversation is that the lowest common denominator had no clue that was going on. They would have bought the console up anyways. And then the people that did.
But I guess the only difference for that in my mind is that the moment you played the moment you did it, even if you didn't know, right? Even if you were uninitiated to it.
It wouldn't matter.
As soon as you did it and you saw, do you not think that those people, I guess that's the biggest way to simplify it. At that point, do you not think that those people would be like, wait a minute.
But
even if it wasn't.
That's a different conversation.
That's
a different conversation though.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Because at that point, they've already made the choice.
They've already made the purchase. Too.
Yes. So that's the thing of no matter what the
and that's also a form of without either company being forthright about what they're trying to do.
I think to answer your initial question though,
yes.
Historically, the way normal consumers, not us, not anybody who's listening to this podcast, but the way normal consumers operate, if they were even aware that the decision was there that Microsoft made, if they were to even look at Sony as an alternative and see that Sony made the decision that Microsoft made as to get away from it, they would not have gone back to PC gaming. They would not have sought after Nintendo. They would have just went back to their preference.
Well, extension of this then, because I brought up, and this is a kind of extended question in the sense of, do you really think change happens because of the casual audience or because of the hardcore audience? And to go back to two examples that I brought up,
it's the casual,
Sonic,
it's the casual audience, but it's the casual audience because of the numbers. It is the most vocal part of the hardcore audience. You get all the vocal criticisms and all the complaints, and you realize what the critique is from the hardcore part, but then you have the numbers of the casual audience that are the driving force.
Now, in the sense of looking at it from the lowest common denominator, right? The multiplayer thing, right, with the online passes. Clearly, the majority of that would have, or at least I say clearly, it would seem to me, looking at it, that the majority of the people who actually pushed back against developers and made something were the people who actually took to online and create a little small bubble.
It's the S21 that started with no headphone jack. Because Bobby had it. I couldn't remember what the dumb phones. They're up to like S55 or something.
Apple hasn't had them in like 5 years. It feels like that might be a little off.
I think it's been longer than that. But anyways,
So Bob, again, extended question, just in the sense of, does change really happen from the everyday casual consumer level, or does it really happen because of the 1 to even say 5% of people who go online and make sure that they're very vocal?
I think what happens is that the hardcore audience,
go ahead,
is the audience that makes the critiques aware to the casual audience, and then internet outrage has a big part to play in it. So like Sonic, your normal 55-year-old mom and dad don't know what Sonic looks like to that degree. To know that the difference of like the CGI character is so far off of what the game.
Well, even then, right, at that point,
the casual gamer,
there's millions of people that are going to go see Sonic without maybe even ever playing a Sonic game.
Right,
ever.
But the casual person who doesn't understand what backwards compatibility is knows what Sonic looks like and know that something was off.
Yeah, but that may not actually change them from seeing the movie.
No,
right?
And that may not actually have them.
And they probably wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. They probably wouldn't have made the outcry.
But if I made the outcry and so many people brought that outcry with it, and they were like, "Oh, that does look bad. Mm-hmm. Like this is what Phantom Lockups look like. This looks so much better." Then it adds on to.
Do you think that in that case, that's a good case? Do you think in that case, do you really find that a lot of the casual audience actually became vocal online?
Online,
yeah. Or vocal in a way that the not the publisher, but I'm talking about the people behind the movie, Paramount, could see. Because essentially, you can say what you want to.
What's your question? You think are you asking that it's
like, okay,
it's online?
So your thing, as I'm understanding it, is that the hardcore audience brings forth the criticism, and then that criticism, unless I'm misunderstanding you, is carried through further by the casual audience,
right? And in this case,
and I guess what I'm asking is, the casual audience, do you really think that them doing that is making the casual audience be vocal in a way that Paramount in that case could actually see? Because me and you, I think it's the numbers that they could feel. It's like Bobby at work, anybody, it doesn't matter.
You're right.
We could talk with somebody at work, and then they could be like, "Yeah, I think that looks bad," and I would hope they change it. But if they're just saying that and they're not taking it anywhere where their Paramount can actually quantify, then I still think at that point you'd have to almost know the breakdown. But it's more of a curiosity of which one in your gut do you feel like is the real reason for the change? Is it because of the small but very loud minority, or do you really think that somehow the very likely mostly silent majority and casual consumer point comes in?
It goes back that
because I think that would impact the Sony Microsoft thing too. Is that would the change just still potentially happen because of the very vocal 1%? Versus probably very unvocal.
The thing with the Sony thing that majority. I think happened so well, and I do want to clarify what I meant by like Sonic is that you don't have to be a hardcore gamer to know that Sonic looked bad in that movie.
Sure. Or at least doesn't look like Sonic.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a weird case of like internet outrage that worked out really well because it did have such large numbers behind it. And for somebody who is a very casual person, even knowing that Sonic looked off, that probably didn't affect them as badly. But I think that the numbers that are carried from the hardcore super fans in this one case of like, I'm sure that there's dozens and hundreds of these cases, but the one small part of the actual fans of Sonic that brought this to the criticism that it made is what caused Paramount to change it. Because they realized...
Or if nothing else, the fear of the casual consumer not watching it because of the outcry that they're hearing.
Which is weird because Paramount execs are the reason behind Halo being so bad. When you really think about it, we've come like a weird full circle.
I haven't watched Halo to say it's bad, but yeah,
I have tried. It's
you did?
Good. Yeah, it's not good.
Okay, I was curious.
Okay, so, but to answer your question, I think that what Sony did was that they saw that they know that anytime consoles come out, it's an open market for a choice. You get to pick as a consumer, what do you go with? Mm-hmm. What console's better? What console has better features? And the second that one feature was a bad feature and they could jump on it and capitalize that their console could do better, they did to sell the more consoles. Whereas I think that if Microsoft came out and they said, this feature is available, this is what you got to deal with, and that people are like, well, that feature kind of sucks. And then Sony came out and said the same thing. They're like, I mean, what can you do? Like the normal person who's paying attention to that point, like me, that might have pushed me into like, I could probably build a PC game. But then you always get back in that mindset of not everybody wants to sit at a computer desk.
Sure,
not everybody wants to play on computer.
And you are going towards my initial argument that I think anytime that a moment like that would happen, so even in the case of consoles, right? And I'll keep it within consoles. I think Nintendo still exists as that third that hasn't made that decision, and therefore people know Nintendo. Nintendo's a big enough existing name in gaming that I think that at least, I don't think it would be a foregone conclusion at the very least. I don't think as soon as Sony said it and Microsoft said it that people would be like, oh, I think people would look more seriously at Nintendo than they used to. And see how much Nintendo might be able to fix that. And then if Nintendo were smart in this situation, they'd have done exactly what Sony did in the situation against Microsoft by Nintendo saying, we're not always online. We'll let you play used games. And as a result, we're going to start making more mature games.
That's what I was going to say. I think I don't
want to act like they don't ever make mature games either. But we're going to make games and make deals with third parties so that we can get the mature games that you'd be looking for.
It's what they did with the Switch versus the Vita. It's that when they saw that the handheld was capitalizing and they wanted JRPGs on it, they were sucking all those away from the Vita. They were sucking indie titles away, like Hollow Knight from the Vita. Sure. And they started like, Hollow Knight is a game that I could always picture on Nintendo, but I also picture it on Vita too. But it's not.
Actually, I remote played it to Vita and I was like, even the UI scale looks like it was made for Vita
like
size screen.
Yeah. So it's just this weird, like, Chris, what do you think? Or you just want to leave this topic ASAP?
I don't mind either way.
I like the Vita.
That's a good answer.
Yeah,
no,
I think the Vita.
I think that no matter how much people want to pretend that they have any influence, corporations make all the decisions. They don't care about your boycotts. They only care if it helps them.
And that's true too.
Well, but the boycotts, really, I guess, because you're all right. At the end of the day, as long as they don't feel like any of the decisions they're making are actually going to hurt their bottom dollar, then they're not going to change them. I agree with that.
Microsoft, but that's the thing. That goes back to the crux of this entire conversation: is if Sony had done what Microsoft did, we could have rioted outside of Microsoft headquarters, and they would have laughed into their dollar bills like that.
Well, I don't think either of them. Like, I agree in the sense of neither of them would have, if Sony and Microsoft both did it, neither of them would have changed policy. I don't think, because you have a united front, even if it's only two. I think Microsoft changed their policy before launch because they had two other competitors that weren't doing what they were doing. But I think in the sense of going back and saying Sony and Microsoft both did the same thing, but then Nintendo stays alone and says, we're not going to do it. I don't think that either of them would have changed until it became clear, if it ever did, that Nintendo was actually going to start stealing enough of their money away. Then if it ever did, then Microsoft and Sony might be like, we're going to reverse our policy. But they wouldn't do it until they knew their bottom dollar was genuinely being affected, is where I stand on it.
I completely disagree, because maybe this is a hot take. Nintendo is not a competitor to Xbox and PlayStation. So it doesn't matter what Nintendo does. It
could have become one.
No, it couldn't have. Elden Ring could never be played on Switch. Unless it's streaming.
We're also talking about prior to the gaming industry doing that. Switch came as a result of after all this, right? But do you think, Wii U wasn't doing too hot even at that point in time, but Nintendo, if they really wanted to look at it, could have saw a hole in the market and then designed something different than the Switch to fill that.
No, Brett's saying that like if
going
there was
back
an
before
opportunity,
Switch.
if an opportunity to completely change their game. I don't think it would have happened, but I see what Brett's saying.
I think
like
they could.
Yeah, and you're probably right. They probably wouldn't have. Knowing Nintendo, they probably
because I was going to say that kind of discounts the 50 however many years Nintendo's existed of their history.
$50 a year to pay to play Nintendo 64 games.
What the hell was that?
The chair breaking.
Oh. Anyway, if you heard a gunshot, don't worry. No, but at the same time, it's weird because like I don't think Nintendo clearly also wouldn't, in that sense, Nintendo wouldn't have agreed with Sony and Microsoft realistically at that point. They would have still just been like, yeah, we're going to let you play used games because our used game market is still $60 games. So you're going to be more likely to just buy the game new.
I'd actually be willing to argue Nintendo would have jumped in bed with Microsoft before Sony in terms of doing this DRM stuff. So it's almost a fallacy because look at who Nintendo is. They charge $60.
They almost don't have to, right? Because Nintendo already says if you're going to buy our games used, our used games stay at $54 anyway. Most people are just going to be like, I'll spend the $6 and get the new copy. Realistically, that's what happens. Even when I worked at GameStop used to, people be like, oh, the used Mario is $54? Just give me the new one. Oh, because 90% of the time too, it was like, oh, you don't have the case. Just I'll buy the new one so I get the case, and it would be like moms because they're like, oh, well, I can't wrap it if it's in this. So yeah, it's funny. Nintendo is a real anomaly in this situation because you almost can't even put them in a position where you want to compare them because they've never been one to compare. I guess GameCube is the closest they've ever really tried. Once PlayStation came in, I mean. The Genesis NES era of Sega versus Nintendo was pretty heated. And I think that's when Nintendo were like, yeah, we're going to do something different.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and hop into the news. First thing, PlayStation is set to reveal its Game Pass competitor that's not really a Game Pass competitor, Project Spartacus, next week, if rumors from Jason Schreier are to be believed. And as much as I don't necessarily care for Jason, his rumors tend to be believed. The service still seems to be a combination of PS Now with PS Plus. Also, hey, Chris, thanks for doing news.
Thank you, Chris.
And I agree with your assertion here. I keep seeing people call this a Game Pass competitor, but at least insofar as the rumors have been talked about, this is not a Game Pass competitor.
No, it's not even close.
It's just a subscription service.
Right.
And
should be like,
PlayStation already has those, so that means PS Plus is a Games Pass competitor?
Should be like
if the only qualifier is that you have to be a subscription service.
It would be like me saying, "Oh, have you seen? You think HelloFresh is going to affect how Netflix operates?"
Yeah. Either way, we'll see. The reality of it is that if Jeff Grubb is wrong, and their version of Spartacus is actually something more akin to day one games from Sony on their platform, then maybe, just maybe, Project Spartacus will be a Game Pass competitor. But the way that the rumors have been going toward, and I think the way Sony's been acting, it's going to be much more PS Now mixed with PS Plus and maybe a few other benefits. Because here's the thing. If they've been building and allowing all this to go on all this time without it being something more than literally just PS Now with PS Plus with no changes, then that's a bad look. There has to be an added layer. I don't know what the added layer is, and that's what we're going to have to see. Is it going to be backwards compatibility, which hasn't been there now, and so therefore you'd pay for it, and it would at least be a benefit? Or is it going to be Game Pass? Hey, we're going to do our games day and date on this service. Who knows?
No.
Do you think they're going to Disney Plus it, where it's like, oh, you can play God of War if you have PlayStation Platinum, whatever we're going to call that, then you can play God of War for just $10. You still have to, we're going to include the game on the service, but for a $10 fee. You buy it for $10 and we still make some money off of our games and your ability to play them for significantly cheaper day one. That would be an interesting mix.
No, they're going to give you 10 hours of God of War.
I think that's actually what's going to be as well. And however, then the occasional game drop down from there.
What I could see game in your scenario is, you can buy it for $10, and if you unsubscribe, the game is gone, and you have to buy it for $70.
Exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah, you wouldn't continue to have the game. Because if I'm not mistaken, with Mulan that they did for Disney Plus,
it's a giant scam.
It was not only $30, it was $30 to rent.
And you had to have a Disney Plus subscription.
So you didn't even buy it to own it, right?
No, it was a scam.
Even if you did, it's ballsy to say, hey, buy our movie for $30, but you have to have your Disney Plus subscription still.
Yeah.
It's a ballsy move.
Insanity.
And that might be what PlayStation does. Hey, buy God of War. Then again, $30 for Mulan's ridiculous. You're paying full price for it. Now, if PlayStation said $10 for God of War, but if you lapse your subscription, you don't own it anymore, that's at least more reasonable than pay full price, and then if you don't keep your subscription, go fuck yourself. Because that's what basically Disney said.
It's almost not even. It's weird because you'd actually be paying more for God of War, like in the end, because you'd be paying the subscription service, which you're assuming is going to be reasonably priced, and I don't think it will be, and then plus $10. So at that point, it's like, should maybe go ahead and just buy the game.
Do you want to put guesses right now, all three of us, on where you think the highest? We don't have to do every tier. What do you think the highest tier is going to cost for this service that gets announced?
$40.
$59.99.
$59.99 a month. I'm gonna go. Do you want to Price is Right it? Do you want to have it to where whoever gets the closest without going over?
Yeah.
Or do you just want to go whoever gets closest?
$1.
$1. I'm gonna say 24. I'm gonna say $24.99.
That's bold. I'm fairly positive there's going to be a $60
and
tier.
I even have a slight belief that the highest one might be $19.99 a month.
No chance. Oh my god. I'll order a pizza to your house during the next show after it's announced, if that's a thing.
If it's $19.99?
Yeah.
What about $24.99?
I'll order breadsticks.
Yes. All right. We'll see. It sounds like this week is the week, so we'll find out how way off or how close each one of us were. Chris, I will buy you a pizza if it's $60 a month. I 100% will, because that is so ridiculous to me. If you're paying the full price of a game per month, you're out of your mind. The whole reason Game Pass, if this is meant to be a Game Pass competitor, that's the important part. The whole reason that Game Pass works at all is because it's not the price of a full game per month. If it is, no one would pay for that.
I was thinking for some reason I was thinking of that fake leak that came out.
Oh, every 3 months.
3 months, yeah. So yeah, $20 is probably right. I was like, are you high, Brett? Like $20? That's cheaper than it is now, and they're gonna add to it.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking $20 to $25 a month. Basically $19.99 to $24.99 a month.
Then I'm with you on like 25. I could see 30, but 25 seems right.
I could see 30 once I understand what the added layer is. Right now, if it's literally just PS Now plus PS Plus and they're finding a way to make it a little cheaper and make it one thing, $30 would be stupid.
I think there's going to be more there because Schreier was saying, I think
there's going to be more, but what is
snappy or splashy? A splashy list of titles on the service. So.
See, but do you think it's going to be more like what they're kind of doing with PS Now right now, where they do like Shadow Warrior, where it's not their games, but you'll get the occasional day and date release with a couple of, cool smaller games.
Here you go. I'll make a bet. I'll make a bet right now. Never mind. I just realized it was a Game Pass game, so it probably won't do that. I was gonna say Weird West was gonna be like a day one. It still could be a day one Spartacus game.
It still could be.
I kind of hope.
Do you think that'll be a thing where if you agree to be a Spartacus game, you can't be a Game Pass day and date, but if you agree to be a Game Pass day and date, you can't be a Spartacus day and date?
I wouldn't be surprised. I
wouldn't either.
I think at that point they'll be kind of eating each other, so that they'll just be like, yeah, whatever. Resident Evil 8 is on both of ours. Happy for the players. When everyone plays, we all win.
Keep telling me that, Phil Spencer. Just like Todd Howard's going to come out on stage in a couple of weeks or a couple months and be like, look, we're doing this, and this with Starfield, and it just works. Someone will be like, I'll believe it when I see it, buddy.
Yeah. Multiple Skyrim-sized planets. Shove off.
It just works, Chris. Stop. Stop. It just works. All right, next thing up. Rockstar is under the udder of GTA 5 again, having announced Grand Theft Auto Plus, a subscription service for Grand Theft Auto Online on next-gen consoles only, or as I like to call them, current-gen consoles.
Yeah, I don't know why I'd said that.
Yeah, among other things, you get 500,000 GTA bucks. Is that actually what they're called?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible. Every month. A $10 value. So it does mean that you get, because it's $6 a month, correct?
Yeah, $6 a month.
So for $6 a month, you get $4 more than what if you just decided every month to buy 500,000?
Savings, yeah.
Savings.
Stonks.
Yeah, it's the old marketing trick of, oh, but if you buy this, we give you extra, and you save money. I'll save money if I wasn't going to buy that to begin with. Then I'm spending. I love that. But no, if I don't get it now, I don't get the extra. Were you going to buy it before the extras were part of it? Then no, you didn't save anything.
Exactly.
Either way, yeah. What are y'all's thoughts on? Well, we'll talk about this later. Actually, it kind of comes as part of that. We'll save it for later. Next thing up, Fortnite's removal of building seeming.
Oh, I don't know what seems
is becoming a new mode. Leakers have found a no-build limited LTM in the game's files. The mode has been highly received by players. And I will say, I've seen a lot of people that used to be like, nah, on Fortnite, being like, oh, cool, I'm going to play Fortnite. I still don't give a damn, if I'm being honest.
It's awesome.
But I saw you download it, and I was like, okay, they won somebody over.
Yeah, I was
Saul,
hyped.
You're one of the, you liked Fortnite until building became like the meta, right?
I will download it again and play it again if they take out building. I'm not going to do it in the week trial because I think I missed it, but I'll definitely do it if it was cool.
Yeah, this was like a very limited mode.
9 days.
7 days. 9 days.
Yep.
So I'll definitely play it if they put it back in.
It's great.
That'd be a fun game for us to play with the boys on Discord.
I guess. I don't even know exactly what Fortnite is, but I assume if there's no building,
it's a third-person battle royale.
It'll be a fun game for me and you to play with people on the Discord.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think training Brett to play Fortnite.
No, we can use Brett as the gateway to introduce you to the boys, and then
yeah.
And then you can see Nathaniel shrieking.
Yeah, the boys is a group. A group.
I thought you were talking about
No, it can include anyone.
It can. You can be a girl and be in the boys. That's cool too. We're very inclusive.
I have a pretty good Fortnite story, actually.
Oh yeah, what's your Fortnite story? Let's hear it.
So my old boss, great guy, tried to play Fortnite once. You know how it has the storm or whatever, and that's how the ring closes.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask.
We were talking about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't really like it because I went inside a house to hide from the storm and died." He thought it was like rain. He didn't get into the circle.
That's actually a relatively
wholesome moment.
Reasonable point.
100%.
As I've said to many times, it's weird to me watching my wife play games because you don't realize how inundated into the way games, the limitations of games that we understand are. And then you'll watch somebody who doesn't always play them and you'll be like, that's actually a completely reasonable point that they just asked or just tried to do. Like, they're like, can you open this door? And, like, we're to the point where, like, most games, you're like, 90% of doors don't open. Don't worry about it. Just pass them.
This guy's as big a gamer as I am. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, this is the guy I told that story about how I bought my PS5 at work. That was him. It was my boss.
Oh, the one who was like, yes, go, please.
Yeah. It's like, you could have told me and I would have let you leave. Like, that kind of guy.
Well, like, my uncle plays games fairly often still. I mean, he's not like a huge gamer, but he plays in between different things. Like his daughters are getting older, so he's playing a little bit more. And sometimes he'll ask me a question and I'll be like, that's actually a great point. Why is that not? Or at least I can be like, that's actually, I can understand why you would have thought that direction. Like, yeah, in a game where it's storms, you would think, okay, get into a structure. It'd be more fun if he was like, I got into a house, I hid in the bathtub, put a mattress on top of me, and I still died. It's bull. But yeah, I do love seeing that. One. I should let my wife play Elden Ring and just see what comes of it. Elden Ring actually might be one of the games that most of what you would try and do might actually be doable.
Maybe so.
I don't know. Play God of War. Why can't I jump? I don't know. If I'm being honest. But all right, next thing up, Rocksteady's Suicide Squad has been officially delayed to 2023. Big surprise. This means that Rocksteady has not released a game since 2015's Batman. No, it's not. Rocksteady released 2017's Batman VR.
That doesn't count.
They haven't released a full title.
They haven't released something worth my time since 2015.
Batman VR is actually pretty sick, but it's still just a VR experience.
It's also on PSVR.
At the end of the day.
You ruined PSVR for me, so not worth my time.
Fair point. That Resident Evil 4 was pretty sick, wasn't it?
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, Chris is going to go home and immediately sell his VR.
I've thought about it.
It's okay. PSVR 2 is coming. And as we're talking about that, Sony has been showing PSVR 2, and the buzz around the showing has been extremely positive. Chet Falazek, a former writer at Valve, says, quote, had one of those VR moments today playing in the new PSVR 2 HMD. You know, where the world just feels different when you return, close quote. Yeah, I remember I saw something about that, and people were saying like his praise of it is a big deal because he's one of the most staunchest defenders of what makes a good VR experience.
Duh.
And as a Valve writer, I would assume he had a pretty heavy hand in Half-Life Alyx, which is one of the acclaimed games of VR. So with that in mind, that's looking good. I'm excited to hear more about it. This was GDC, so most people had heavy NDAs where they could not really talk about it much more than that, but we'll see what comes of it. Let's see. Next thing, with the recent system update, indications are that VRR, which is variable refresh rate for those who may not know, support is coming in the coming months to PlayStation 5, which is great because that's one of these things that they were talking about eventually adding. It is currently a system level feature for Xbox, if I'm not mistaken, that PlayStation doesn't have. And I think it'll be a big boon for certain games that people occasionally have issues hitting a stable frame rate on, like Elden Ring for some people, and like some of the higher frame rate versions of games that don't quite hit their 60 at all times. Essentially, the idea is that the screen, if you have one that supports variable refresh rate, can actually change how many hertz, therefore how many frames it builds per second, so that you don't get screen tearing or any kind of weird delay because of the pacing of your frames coming out differently. So it's a great feature. Do you guys think we'll see 1440p support on PS5 like Xbox has?
I hope so, because then I could use it on my monitor.
Yeah. Someone the other day was like, I don't know why anybody would want that. I said a lot of people use monitors, and a lot of monitors are the ones that have VRR. Most TVs do not have VRR. So if they're going to add that in, 1440p support almost seems like a foredrawn conclusion.
I think they did say they were doing it, though.
I hope it's a good idea. I mean, you know, I'm going to still use my TV, and eventually I'll buy a new OLED with VRR, but we'll see. All right, the last thing out of this week that is of real value is Sony has acquired Haven Studios. You may remember them as the team that was headed by Jade Raymond, the producer behind titles like Assassin's Creed 2. And they were originally contracted out and worked with Sony basically as a founder startup, with Sony funding them to create an exclusive PlayStation AAA multiplayer title that's a live service game. From what we understand. So Jim Ryan on the acquisition says, quote, Haven Studios is an emerging studio with an exceptional team of talent, and we're delighted to welcome them into PlayStation as our first game development studio in Canada, end quote. The studio is building a AAA multiplayer game, like we said, and whatever Sony is seeing must be exciting. It'll be interesting to find out if they go this route with Deviation and or Firewalk. Now, first thing, congratulations to Haven. I mean, that's cool. Jade Raymond is a pretty highly sought after person, and her time at Google seemed to be highly disrespected. Google is just like, yeah, we're not going to let you go ahead.
Have a feeling Sony will not shut the studio down before the first game comes out. So maybe she'll have a job for more than a week.
Same. Definitely when Sony seems to be, I don't want to say desperate because it's not, but Sony seems to be clearly looking in one direction for what they want to start investing in. They're going to continue investing in their normal type of games, but currently they are very head down in the we want to invest in multiplayer. So one of the things that has come out of this that I think, if you've been online at all in the gaming circles, you've probably seen at least one person say, is the console war. Oh, I guess this goes to show that Sony doesn't do organic growth, which the weird irony that I did not hear anybody bring that up on the one example of the least organic growth that they've done, Bungie.
Exactly.
Bungie is the antithesis, there we go,
nice.
Of how Sony typically goes about their things. Haven is a weird thing because it's been drawing that about how Microsoft buys talent and Sony builds it up slowly but surely and invest in it before fully acquiring it. And we've had conversations about that. Like, I think Chris on the episode where Saul was out had mentioned that he's starting to kind of shift his opinion on the idea of Sony just essentially.
We talked about that on Discord. I haven't talked about that.
That was Discord. That was something we talked about in person, but it may not have been on the show. Of you talking about like you didn't think that there was much. You're starting to see more value in Sony just buying something like
what I was. I'll just
go ahead.
What I was saying was that the more I think about acquisitions and like Colin Moriarty of Last Stand, he talks about how he wants them to build studios from the ground up, right? And I've always been like, yeah, that makes sense. But the more I've been thinking about acquisitions, to me, it just makes more sense to go, okay, we love Remedy games. We love how you guys are. Do you buy Remedy or do you just take? So you're like Sam Lake, come on, you're coming to Sony. So you take a bunch of his staff with you. You've now gutted Remedy. Remedy exists in name only at that point, and you've just created Remedy, but with a new studio. You know what I mean? So at a certain point, it just makes more sense to me to just buy Remedy.
And it depends on how it gets made. Sometimes this happens because they don't poach. Somebody says, "I'm looking to leave Remedy," for example, like you said, and then Sony takes that opportunity and says, "Hey, that's great." And then a couple people decide to go, "Well, we really liked working with Sam, so if you'll have us, Sam, we'd like to work with you at your new studio." Right. Sometimes it happens in a less poaching way, but sometimes it is poaching. Sometimes it's like, "Hey,"
but even if that happens.
Do you remember the Initiative?
Yeah.
And the weird, ironic situation of them eventually coming back in with Crystal Dynamics. And the reason being is that a good bit of the staff already at Crystal Dynamics came with the two people that are heading the Initiative, and they came from Crystal Dynamics. And then what are we seeing? We're essentially seeing them two getting pulled, other people being joined from other parts of the industry. The two people who were the head people at Crystal Dynamics, their style of workflow is not jiving very well with all these people they brought in from disparate studios. So what do? They go, let's just go get all the people who know how we work at Crystal Dynamics. This is an actual quote. Like, they know how we work and they work well under this. So we just decided to partner with Crystal Dynamics to aid in development. So essentially they did exactly what you're talking about, but without buying Crystal Dynamics. They just said, we'll just contract you out and then have you work with our new studio that has leaders that you're used to working with so that we can make this game.
Yeah,
I can see the value.
To me, it just seems to make more sense. Like, let's say they take Miyazaki from, right? At that point, is From the same From that's making Elden Ring? No. Right?
No, it'll be looked at as this is the From that made Dark Souls 2, which is what everyone views as the worst Dark Souls game, whether that's true or not.
So you at the point where because I feel like if you're poaching people from certain teams, you're poaching them for the talent, right? You're poaching Miyazaki because of Dark Souls and Elden Ring and Bloodborne. So at that point, you just buy From because you're trying to emulate that, right?
Are they? That's the real question. If I could see if it's a sense where Sony's like, we want to make a game like Destiny, but so we're just going to poach people from Bungie, and then just be like, you know what? Why not just buy Bungie and buy Destiny, and then we have Destiny?
Exactly.
I can see that, but if their thought is we like the creative process that Bungie goes through, but we're not necessarily trying to make the same game as Bungie, but we like the ideas that some of these people have and the way they approach idea making. So we're going to take some of them and some of other people and make something that's original. Sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes studios are formed from people from studios and they make something that's different.
Yeah, but I'm specifically saying, like, if you went and poached Miyazaki, you'd be poaching him in the hopes that he would do something to capture what he's done before. Otherwise, there's no reason.
Definitely Miyazaki, somebody who's that.
But even
that
Kojima,
kind of name.
You want Kojima because of his eccentricness.
Because they're on series, right? Both of them are known by name when plenty of other directors are.
Kojima's kind of a bad example for my point because he kind of just makes whatever the hell he wants. But I think if you're going, to Miyazaki and you're like, we want you to open a studio for PlayStation, you have a specific view in mind. Even if you go to him and you're like, you can make whatever the hell you want. You could make a kart racer. You're still not hiring him to make a kart racer. Jim Ryan would be kicking himself in the pants if he just poached Miyazaki and he got a kart racer. He's poaching Miyazaki to hopefully get a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne or an Elden Ring. So at that point, buy From, because you've now gutted From, and now he's just going to have to hire people to do what they do. You know what I mean? That's kind of my big point, where I just think it makes more sense. Like if Joe Schmo, if a bunch of Joe Schmoes from these studios, no offense to developers, but if a bunch of random people who we don't know of and maybe are vital to those teams, but they don't necessarily gut a studio, start their own studio, then we see that. We see that with Deviation and Firewalk. But I think if you're going for specific stuff, it makes more sense to just buy From than try and open a studio because you don't want to acquire. You'd rather open your own studios, but then have them do the same thing.
Yeah, I can see your point. Either way, I think
terms
that,
of the topic.
Yeah, going back to this, I think, I guess, look, base feeling before anything else is said. So when you look at Haven Studios being open with Sony funding and in partnership with Sony, and then being bought a little over a year after that, or about a year after that announcement, in your view, is that organic or inorganic?
It depends on if they were bought with their own will. It depends on if Haven wanted to be bought.
From everything that's been being said by Jade and everyone at the studio,
if the studio execs sold off just to sell it off and nobody in the studio, developers and such, did not, then no. But if they wanted that and they saw it as a team that they wanted it, then yeah, that would have been an organic growth. But if they did not, no. Yeah,
I can actually agree with that. I mean, and it could just be PR, but Jade has said that everyone at the studio, she talked to them because she didn't want it to just be it needs to be a corporate sellout, but rather that everyone agreed that it was a
99% of the studio would have wanted it, then sure. But if it's one of those horror stories that we hear, which we'll know in months or less, it's not even has to be years at this point.
True. That's absolutely true. I could agree with that. I think one of the things I saw is Hogue Law on Twitter came to kind of this point, and it's really funny seeing people be very defensive about the state of organic or not. I saw a lot of PlayStation fans, very hardcore PlayStation fanboys, attacking him because he said something to the effect of this, to the effect of Microsoft's and Tencent and everyone else who's being very big towards acquisitions right now. He's saying that Microsoft and those people are putting pressure on Sony to move in a quicker fashion than usual. And a lot of people are like, how is this not organic? And he never said it wasn't, but people are being very iffy and kind of toxic to what that actually means. And I found it interesting because of the fact that is the way I would describe this. If someone looked at me and was like, what would you call this? I'd say this is organic, but the difference is that Sony didn't have the time because of the pressure of potentially losing Haven to someone else in the future. Sony didn't have the time to go their normal timeline of a few years and a few releases of proven growth. And instead, Sony had to look and go, we've got a great relationship. This is seeming to work out really well. Everyone at the studio is liking the freedom that we give, and we're liking the product that they're giving back to us. So instead, we're going to make the decision to buy them off of the promise of what we see, rather than the stone cold known success of a product that's actually come out. And I don't think that that's a weird position. I think that this is more organic than just being like, hey, we're going to buy you Activision. I mean, yeah. Is it a little less feel good as being like, look at that, they released 7 games with Sucker Punch and then said, hey, Sucker Punch, we're going to buy you, is really 4. But point being, nonetheless, that's how Sony has typically done things. They didn't buy Insomniac until very recently. And Insomniac has made probably 15 exclusive games for PlayStation over the last 10 years or whatever it be. So all that said, I think it's a weird position that people are arguing about the organic nature of this, and even the importance of organic. I mean, there is an importance to it. Even we've said that it's great when a studio has this happen because there is a understanding, a mutual relationship that already exists, and that relationship is very close and they understand how to work. And I think that in some ways, that's why it makes sense that Microsoft bought Bethesda. Mm-hmm. They had a very close relationship with Bethesda, as we saw with all of the modding elements of Skyrim, and we saw Sony be a thorn in Bethesda's side over that. So
I would agree.
All things said.
So
go ahead.
It's funny because my take is that this is neither inorganic nor organic. This is exactly what everybody wanted. This is Sony just opened a new studio. That's all they did.
I mean,
they've been funding Haven since before day one.
Yep.
All they did was make it official. They created a new studio with Jade Raymond.
Yeah.
And this is
but with an out in case it didn't case it didn't seem to check out.
Right. If for some reason no one wanted to work with her, or the game came out and it was just dog doo doo, they could cut it. But the game clearly looks insane. And if you saw the concept art, it looks cool. The concept art seems neat. So I don't know. I think it's funny because I've been seeing these inorganic, organic stuff. Even in our Discord, I think someone brought it up. And I'm like, no, this is just them creating a new studio.
Which is what people have been ascribing toward organic.
Right. Well, and it's funny because if they bought Kojima tomorrow, same thing. It'd be the exact same. They've been funding it since day one.
Yeah. And they have a long-running relationship with Kojima as an individual.
Sure. So, in that sense, it would have made sense for this to happen. But right now, Sony basically built Kojima Productions. So if they bought him, it would just be them. They opened a studio with Kojima, and now it's a first party. I don't know. I don't think this has anything to do with acquisitions in the same sense as Bethesda or Nixus or Valkyrie or Housemarque, Insomniac. Yeah. This is a new studio they made official. They put a ring on it.
Yeah, my thing from moment one when this was announced was I'm sure that when they first funded this and agreed to partner with them, there was always a clause or whatever you want to call it, an option where if Sony could say we get first dibs on if you ever decide to sell the company, or we have the ability to come in and say, yes, this is working to what we thought. Here's our offer, and you can accept or decline. Yeah, I'm sure that was built in from moment one, because why would you even put this much money and pressure behind if you didn't have some intention of being if it works in our favor, we would like some form of benefit over everyone else because we helped you get this springed off the ground. We were a springboard for this to happen.
You got to imagine if your new studio is making an exclusive IP funded by Sony for the PS5, that's an audition. You have to know that going into it, right? It would be kind of crazy to think it's not.
Yeah. Best case scenario, you get, depending on what you want, but best case scenario, you get bought because they absolutely love. Middling scenario, they like your stuff, but are still unsure of whether they want to put a ring on it. So they keep working with you closely and just, Insomniacing it for a while, even though I'm pretty sure Insomniac just didn't want to sell for a long time. I think that's actually the difference. But yeah. Or worst case scenario, they go, this isn't working. And just like they did with Ninja Theory, they're like, see ya.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And then Microsoft got Bleeding Edge.
Today marks the 20th anniversary of Kingdom Hearts.
Oh. Still never played those.
It launched to this day in Japan.
Lead me into everlasting darkness. Man. Kingdom Hearts. I had a dream that Kingdom Hearts 4 got revealed last night.
Yeah.
And it was coming this year.
What was the new Disney? Was it Marvel?
Actually, I don't think Disney was involved in it at all.
Oh, was it Capcom?
In my dream.
To a portal. It was Kingdom Hearts.
Which is weird.
Capcom.
I would honestly prefer it this way now. If they could do Square Enix and Kingdom Hearts, I think that'd be better.
Sora versus the Tyrant.
Disney.
What was the best world other than Tony Hawk? Toy Story. Every other Disney world in that game was trash. Oh well, I'll say that.
Pirates was actually cool.
No,
I like Pirates. And Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6. Yeah, Big Hero 6 and Toy Story. Every other one was trash. What's the point of Frozen being in there for such a short period of time? Tangled for such a short period of time.
Don't get me wrong. My excitement for the Kingdom Hearts games, 99% of it has zero to do with Kingdom Hearts. With Disney. If I'm being honest, I like the aspects.
What's crazy is the first two aren't like that for me.
Yeah, it's weird. I think the first two.
Tarzan.
The first two wear their Disney inspiration better into the story than eventually they did. But the problem is that they've kind of gotten sucked into the fact that Kingdom Hearts is expected to have to have Disney.
Yeah. So even if that's not what you're trying to do,
you're like, I'm over here trying to tell a story about a boy whose, heart is being broken and the importance of friendship and power. I'm not really worried about all this other. Like the Disney parts of all the games that have always consistently worked is Donald, Goofy, Mickey.
A story about
why is that not Disney enough for everyone, right?
A young story about a boy with an edgy friend. He gets his heart broken by a brown-haired woman, and he really kind of learns through life lessons with a mentor. I freaking love Boy Meets World, man. I love it.
Oh boy! All right, guys. Let's see what we were talking about earlier, and kind of what we wanted to end the show off on is there was a tweet that I saw that I feel like I'm correctly ascribing to our buddy Ryan on Twitter. And it was someone talking about GTA Plus. And what was kind of brought as a result of that is this idea that GTA Plus is going to be the first stepping stone toward Rockstar doing this with all their future games before eventually the success of GTA Plus and then Rockstar doing it and then Spartacus if it's successful and then Game Pass is that the industry as a whole is going to largely move towards a subscription-based gaming future. And essentially, what are our thoughts on that? And how likely do we think it is to happen? And if it happens, how good, bad, or neutral of a thing that it is? Do you think that's a fair way to kind of phrase what we're talking about or what we agreed to talk about?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Now, I guess first question out of all that. Do you think the emergence of GTA Plus is a sign towards a rapidly expanding industry change towards subscription model?
PS Plus? No.
No, GTA Plus.
Oh, okay. GTA Plus, absolutely.
Okay.
Do I think it's for the betterment or not?
Well, yeah, we'll get there. So, Chris, do you think that GTA Plus, just as what it is signs of a rapidly increasing subscription model being pushed into gaming?
Yes and no.
I think that me and you might be in the same part. I don't necessarily think it's proof of it being rapidly expanding, but it's clearly proof of the idea wanting to be toyed around with more and more frequently. But I don't know if I'm to the point that I would look at it from a rapid. And I think some of that is because of the way that PlayStation has approached subscription services. And Project Spartacus might be the tipping point, depending on how they approach it and what actually it encapsulates as to whether I want to start considering it more rapid or not. That's my current feel, and this coming week could very much have a big impact on that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that the GTA stuff is hard to talk about with the potential of next week's news that I think about it, or the potentiality of next week's news.
Yeah, certainly. Look, let me back up for a second. Let's look at this from the more minor scale that he kind of talked about of moving this towards Rockstar, or at least let's just kind of focus it towards Rockstar. Do you guys think that GTA Plus is any indicator of them fairly soon doing something similar for Red Dead?
No.
Or Red Dead Redemption?
No.
Red Dead Online is dead.
Yep.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I never got into it. I've also never.
They don't update it. There are things in it that are broken that they either if they fix it's weeks and weeks after.
So when you say dead, do y'all mean that people don't play it, or that it's not played enough for Rockstar to care about updating it?
No, actually,
Rockstar
I think
doesn't care
enough.
about it.
Yeah, I think it's played enough. I think that most of the community ends up leaving because it's not cared about. Rockstar?
Do you guys find it weird that they wouldn't try and replicate that success with Red Dead Online, or do you think that they actually looked at it like, we're going to do Red Dead Online, but we still want to focus on GTA 5 because it's a proven success?
I don't think they needed to. I think that that the second part was that GTA 5 was such a proven success that they ended up canceling the single player DLC for it, and then what they decided to do instead of doing single player DLC was to continue this, and then instead of thinking about what they could do for Red Dead, they wanted to maintain the success that they had with GTA 5. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel with Red Dead, they just wanted to keep the success rolling.
Well, I wonder if part of it was a fear of cannibalizing the proven success of GTA 5 by something that may not be a continued success.
It could have been.
Because like if Red Dead Online was a flash in the pan,
like team
and worked for a while,
having certain parts of the team like not working on things.
And then you run the risk of pulling people off of GTA, and that wheel has not even. It's like they don't even need to grease that wheel, right? It's just a constant. It's got the best bearings that the industry's ever seen. It just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, and they're just like, yeah, we'll keep letting it spin and spin, and then we'll put a new skateboard on it, and then hey, look, the same wheel on a new skateboard, and then they'll just keep doing that. I could kind of see that. All right, so as we continue on, do you guys view the thought of push towards an industry that is overwhelmingly subscription based? Do you view that as negative, neutral, or positive?
Neutral.
I'm gonna start neutral. Okay.
Neutral and negative.
Okay. So why for each one of you, Chris? If you're saying neutral, what is it about it that keeps it as a more or less indifferent thing for you?
Subscription services are entirely optional.
Okay. For you as a personal gamer, do you think it impacts you positively or negatively? Or neutral?
I don't know. Maybe I'm being pedantic, but I can't answer that question because
you don't feel like we live in that yet for you to have experienced it? Or
I don't.
Is it?
That's a very specific question because if Apex had a subscription service that gave me the battle pass every time, gave me legend coins, and I don't know, did something for me for $6 a month, I would subscribe to it.
Okay. Well, then I think that
I don't care about GTA Plus. It does nothing for me. So right now, none of the games that I play and care about have a subscription service, except Final Fantasy 14.
So, but if they move to one, then do you start to view it more negatively, or is it very much dependent on what the subscription service is because of it being optional?
It's going to depend on the subscription service because if the Apex subscription service only just was like, this is how you play the game, you need to subscribe to play, yeah, I'd be pissed. But if it gave me skins and coins and perks for a couple bucks a month, I'd be happy. That's a question that entirely depends on who's doing it.
Both of you, this is for my own education. Both of you, I think at least to some extent, have played Grand Theft Auto Online, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have.
My question here, and it's a genuine question because people talk about other things, is there any way that you guys see that GTA Plus giving people $500,000 GTA bucks a month creates any kind of unfair paid advantage against free players? Because the reason I ask is your example of Apex, right? If Apex is just they're giving you skins and the battle pass, things that are entirely they don't give you any kind of improvement anywhere. They're just strictly visual or whatever it be that you would go for it, then yeah. So in GTA 5, does that money not go towards something that would create an imbalance to where players could potentially push you out or potentially push newer players or free players out of the game disproportionately? You said no. I'm assuming that's
no, because I can spend $10 today and get the same amount of money.
Again, point being is essentially pay to win. That's what I'm asking. Is that does this as a subscription amount similar to the idea of pay to win?
I understand, but isn't me spending the $10 pay to win in that scenario? So if the option to pay to win is already currently available, then
that's what I'm asking. Is it? It doesn't have to be tied to the subscription. Even if you look at the 10,000, does people being able to buy money create a pay to win situation in Grand Theft Auto, or is the game designed in such a way that what you buy with that money doesn't actually impact your ability to overpower someone?
Well, it depends on what you buy. You could spend that $500,000 on modding cars and just making them look cool, or just buying apartments. There's a lot of ways to spend that money. I don't think in this specific scenario it's any more pay to win than the microtransactions that already exist.
I guess I should ask: is GTA Online competitive in any sense? I don't even know that
it can be. You can do team deathmatch and stuff. I don't really know. I'm not big on the like cocaine warehouse shit that they have in there.
Okay.
So I don't.
Because I'm thinking, like, if it is competitive to any degree, can you buy weapons that would give you a benefit over other people that they can't buy? But then at the same time, is that already inherently in the game?
That's already
It really
there.
goes to show just how ignorant to the game I am. I don't know what the online component is. I guess I assume that the idea behind the online is it's just the chaotic non-story parts of Grand Theft Auto, but with other players in the city alongside you. Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, Saul, I'm going to turn a question to you. Positive, negative, neutral on the general future of games being more subscription-based.
I think that subscription base in general for anything is becoming a negative. I don't think that it inherently means that it's a negative.
But it's being used in a negative fashion?
I think that it has the potential to be abused by companies. I think that subscription services are replacing the very standard things that you often just have rights to purchase outright. They're being replaced with subscription services that are completely non-needed at all. And I don't like the way that we're moving as technology and humans into this era. I've spoke about this like 2 weeks ago about this exact same thing potentially happening. And it's like Rockstar listened and was like, you know what? We're going to create a subscription service for our game entirely.
Before we get too far away from it, just so I understand, listeners understand, whatever, what are your examples of your view of your statement of subscription services replacing things that you could otherwise buy individually? Do you mean strictly from like a microtransaction standpoint? Is your fear that there will literally become a point where instead of being able to spend the $10 for Grand Theft Auto online bucks, that you're going to be forced to have to pay the subscription version to get that value? Or what do you mean by that statement? If you have examples to help clarify.
Well, I'll just break it down. So with a PlayStation, I have to have a PS Plus subscription to play online.
Okay.
And that's a half. Like I have to have that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have internet to play online entirely.
Of course.
Those are requirements that I understand are needs, not requirements. I mean, those are requirements, not needs. Those are requirements, not wants. I have to have that to play online. Those are forgivable, quote unquote. Those are just, I know that those are just going to have to be what it's going to have to be. We got that way though, by accepting the fact that we now play for PlayStation when last year you did not.
Sure.
Up until the end, right? I think is how that worked.
PS3, but yeah.
Well, yeah,
it is hard. You're right. It's hard to look at new gen systems.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But we did that because Microsoft set the example of that people will pay for this. Let's do it. And we're in this exact same thing now, but with games. So now Rockstar is at this weird thing of like, let's create this subscription service for our game, which a subscription service for a game typically has been exclusive to MMOs. I'm sure there's weird niche examples of this happening in other games, but it typically is with MMOs. Now, the difference is that you have to pay that to play the MMO. You don't have to pay that to play this. I do not know enough about GTA Online to know if this gives you any kind of advantage or not. Like Chris said, this is completely optional.
Go for it. What's up, Chris?
I asked Blake, because Blake plays, and I said, are microtransactions GTA Online a famous port of pay to win in your opinion? He says, somewhat, at least in free roam. You can buy your way into special apartments that have guided missile systems, flying cars with rockets, but you can use that stuff in missions or anything. So it depends.
You can't use it in missions?
You can.
So it's...
you
can.
I'll clarify. But yeah, I think he says can.
Because if you can use those things in missions, does that give you a higher chance of completing the mission, therefore getting more money, and then being able to further buy yourself into being able to essentially bully down on other people? That's what I'm understanding.
That is how the mission structure kind of does work. I do remember that, unless that's changed from how it used to be.
You can't use it in missions.
Okay, good.
That checks out then.
So yeah, this is almost the same.
It's like chaos and free roam, but controlled in a mission environment where you could otherwise unfairly benefit, right? Because I mean, essentially, if you have the ability for those in mission, you could complete missions easier and quicker, and therefore,
in game is free roam though.
I mean, that's true.
The only reason to do missions is to be better in free roam. And
so
this automatically gives you a leg up without having to do set missions.
I am assuming because I don't even know what the
that's
missions
how it was
are.
when I played it.
So the missions aren't like individual instances, right? The missions happen within the same world.
Well, they are, but it's like a strike.
So it loads you into a lot. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a strike. Yeah, it takes you out of the world and puts you in this new world with like 3 match-made people or friends or whatever.
Okay,
and then you end up with a mission, then you're outside the building in free roam again. It's like you're just standing there, and then you have all your upgrades, and then people are out in the world with you.
Once you complete the mission, you come back. It kind of like as if you automatically went back to the tower.
Or like when you complete a mission in GTA, you walk out of the building and you're just standing there like in the open world again. It's kind of like that, but there are
suddenly you're loaded back into the grand server. Yeah.
So like there's a way, and this is cynical, or actually this is pessimistic, but if this is a company driven thing, they're in it for the money. Sure. So you can only assume that eventually it's going to get to the point of like where it's going to be unneeded. It's going to be, and by that I mean that it's going to be strictly for people who do want to pay to win. Because you could argue that pay to win is in mobile games and it's an option. But even then, if you don't use that option, then you will be stuck. Like the game then becomes designed around using that option.
Okay.
The second we hit that step, which is what I classify as step 1, because we're in step 0 now, that's when it automatically becomes a no argumental negative. Because if at that point you're designing your game to be then paid to win, and when you start that, you put everybody else who has the option but chooses not to pay at a disadvantage inherently by game design.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
specifically from a game design
and
function.
that is where I will fundamentally disagree on this. And then here's the problem is this what I talked about a couple months ago, is this will spread like the plague. So Rockstar gets away with it. Well, then I promise you, I actually guarantee you within 6 months, Ubisoft will do this. I want somebody to let's see, it will be on September the 27th. If Ubisoft has not done this, I will give the first person who points that out $100. But I am that confident that Ubisoft will not.
And this is already not the first time of this, right? This is essentially akin to Fallout First, which is part of Fallout 76, and I have a better understanding of what that is.
Yeah, and once again, inherently, this does not mean a bad thing, but companies want money, so you can automatically assume that it has to have a profit in there.
So, Chris, go ahead, and then I have a kind of a point/question or thought process, but go ahead. You had something.
No, I don't know. I'm not confused. I understand the point. I don't understand why you seem to have like such you have a vehement issue with it, because like what's the context where it's bad until like I feel like this is one of those things where like you'll know it's bad when it's bad. You know? But right. Until it's bad, it's almost not even like worth even thinking about, because it's completely optional.
Until Rockstar decides to take advantage of it. And then when they decide to take advantage of it by changing around game design to give it in the player's advantage of doing this instead of not.
Yeah, that's the point.
And here's why I brought up Rockstar canceling single player DLC, was that they decided that instead of putting their people onto single player aspects of the game, if they've always traditionally done, they've changed it and they made it to a multiplayer thing. So they've been focusing on this multiplayer aspect of their game for so long that I'm not going to say and be that pessimistic and say, yeah, they will do this. But it's not going to surprise, I think, anybody that if they start to change game design to this. And then, but here's the thing. Well, and here's the thing with like Rockstar, I'm not going to say that they have been a scummy company in the past with stuff like this. I can't think of a single example when they've shoehorned people into having to pay for stuff like this. But when you have game devs for like Ubisoft, I will go back to them, where devs came out and said that some of the stuff in Assassin's Creed Limited Edition was actually scheduled for the game, and they hid it behind a limited edition paywall.
Yeah,
that's when you start to get scummy game design.
Well, see, it's like we talk about, and it's always things don't have to be inherently bad. Like microtransactions are not inherently bad, but when microtransactions lead you to doing like what Assassin's Creed Odyssey did, where they purposely cut the experience rate from what was expected from previous game, Origins, to make it to where you more slowly level up unless you buy a double XP boost. which then essentially puts the game at where universally everyone says feels in line roughly with where Origins was before and what would make sense for standard game pacing, then what you're doing is you're adjusting game mechanics in order to try and push someone towards buying something that is not required, but is so inherently against them from the beginning that you are pushing people into buying it. And so even if they don't make it, like you said, it's when they start changing game design to push people into buying it.
Yes. Is that when it becomes...
Instead of leaving it as an optional, you can buy it at any point. But if you don't, here's a reasonable form of the game.
Once they push the fact that you have an inherent disadvantage.
Yeah.
Without you making that choice. Now, I don't remember if it was Blake I got in a conversation with on this. I think it was. But I might be wrong. But we were talking about this whole Assassin's Creed thing. And we were talking about how when you have specific items in game made for limited editions, pre-order bonuses and stuff like that, I brought it up as a point that eventually some of that stuff gets put in the game, no charge.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets sold on the PlayStation Store for $4. At what point, ethically and morally, you'll never know. But at this point, it's like that $4 sword that they're selling extra only has a $4 value because they deemed it as so to put in a pre-order bonus. But how do you know that sword was created in mind of being a pre-order bonus, and they did not just take one of the swords they had that was going to be in the game originally,
and then go, hey, let's
take this out, let's take access away from this, and then the second stuff like that proves that it happens, like it did with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think, or Origins, whichever one that came out where the devs were like, we took things out specifically to put them in the market. Like we took things out of the game that you would have had for free and charged you for it.
And of course, it's anecdotal. We don't ever completely know, but at least the concept behind
it's the planting a seed philosophy of like, well, now you have this happen. Well, like I said, Rockstar's never given you a choice, but the second Ubisoft starts doing this, it's like, okay, now they for sure, like they're more likely to do something that I would have negative thoughts on than Rockstar. But it's still...
Or at least the more hands that are in the pot, the more likely that someone will start to do unsavory things.
And by nature...
Somebody with dirty hands is eventually going to put their hands in the pot.
Exactly. And by nature of having dirty hands, you have the arms that are started to have those hands. And I think that this is the arms. This process here with Rockstar doing this is the arms of the machine. The dirty hands will follow. And it's by nature just how this will work. This is what I said, when we talked about this not too long ago. That's my stance on it all. I don't like it just because it's opening up windows for more subscription services. And subscription services don't have to be a bad thing, but there are things in this world that have subscription services now that have never had subscription services in the past. You used to be able to buy Photoshop for like $400. Now you have to pay $10 a month for it. Guess what? In 40 months' time, you've lost your money. It's the same thing with like renting your router from your cable company. It's the same thing with like you can go buy these things, or you used to be able to. Now you physically can't. You can't buy. Yeah. It's not Sony Vegas anymore, but it's because they sold it. But you can't go buy Vegas editing software anymore at a premium. I don't think. Last time I tried, you could not.
Yeah,
it was on a subscription service.
Yeah, they moved
that might have changed
because it's more beneficial to them.
Yeah, they'll make more money.
More beneficial to you, right? Because you get included in updated versions. But at the same time, if you just want to buy something because this current version fits your needs,
or it's beneficial because maybe you don't have $500 to shell out. You have $20 this month, and you don't use it for 4 months. Then it makes perfect sense.
Sure.
But not everything has to be that way.
But it goes back to what Jehudi MD said in the community's take. Options are good.
Actually, when Vegas sold out in 2017 or 16, I think they've stopped making this. It's $7.79 a month.
Ooh.
And I might be reading this wrong. Vegas Edit 365 valid until when? So it's a month. Actually, that's not a month. That's like 6 days. Yeah. So I don't know why you would do this to begin with, but look what it's called. Pro 19. Why are you buying a 3-year-old outdated model for $7-something a month?
Yeah.
I mean, Walmart Plus exists, so we're in a whole new world.
What is Walmart Plus? Is that Justin Timberlake? No, but scrolling fastly.
Walmart Plus is Justin Timberlake. That's what it sounded like you just asked.
That's the most confusing thing I've ever heard.
What is Walmart Plus? Is that Justin Timberlake? It's Justin Timberlake in disguise.
But what is Walmart Plus? Wait a second. Is that the little discount system they have?
I have no clue what
I think
it is.
So.
I think it gives, and I think for certain things it gives you like first dibs. I think like PlayStation 5s, they'll alert you before they alert like other people. You'll get a chance.
Oh, what a sham.
I don't know if that's true. I could be wrong. But I know
let me pay this billion-dollar corporation an extra couple bucks a month.
Kiki mentioned that he was able to get Vince's PS5 somehow, some way through benefit of Walmart Plus. Rather,
now if that's all Walmart Plus is, that's dumb. If it has other services, which I'm sure it does, I'm gonna look it up right now. But what does communities take for the episode?
I guess we can rotate it around this in particular. How do you feel about games moving more towards subscription services? And is it something that you like, dislike, or neutral toward? I mean, I guess I can pose them the same questions that you guys were posed.
Okay. Walmart Plus is actually, I can't see the price, but this looks really well done. This is, you get early access to promotions.
Okay.
Including Black Friday. You get free shipping with no minimum order.
Okay.
You get free delivery from your store.
Okay.
So your local store brings it to you for free.
This is basically Amazon Prime.
Hold on. This ain't done. You get discounts on pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
You get cheaper gas prices.
Okay.
5 cents a gallon. That's actually kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Depending on how much you have to get up. And then you scan items as you shop in the stores and it pays off your phone and you don't have to check out at all.
Okay.
So you go through with your buggy and then you scan everything and then you just pay it and I guess you walk out.
It's like an in-store version of Amazon
So this
Prime.
is 100% one of those subscriptions. I'd say this is worth it. This is where subscription services are like. This is the little hope that subscription services work really well. Who's playing xylophone? Or is that your low battery warning? I heard. Yeah, it's.
I heard it. Yeah. All right.
It's a good thing we're wrapping up, I guess.
It is a good thing we're wrapping up. These headphones are getting on their last leg.
Hey, and don't forget, you can visit the Triangle Square subscription service at patreon.com where you can pay $1 a month. That's only $365 a year.
Oh, wait, guys, we're throwing stones in a glass house.
A glass house,
dude. This is like Candy Rock House is what we're in.
Guys, we've got to start changing the mechanics of this show to benefit people who pay so that they'll want to pay.
Dude. Okay. I guess listeners, let's put them at what is the lowest kilobyte you can put as audio?
If you listen through Spotify, you're going to listen to 64 kilobytes per second.
Bro, you're going to be listening. Okay. So yeah, starting today on, if you listen to the show for free, Shuhei, I don't know why I said Shuhei. Shuhei will just murder you. That's number one. If you're at $1 a month, I'm coming for you.
If you're at $5 a month, you're in the clear.
Well, you're in the clear on Fridays and Thursdays of every month. Tuesdays I can help you. That's
$100
Chris
a month
coming for you.
I'm coming.
Yeah, and not with intent of bodily harm.
Are we still talking about death, or are we talking about something else?
But you guys can answer our community's take, which is, of course, what do you think of the Rockstar subscription situation? You can find us at Triangle. Why do I do that? You can find us at Twitter at Triangle SQRD. You can find us at Discord in the link description below. You can find us on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. And of course, you can find us across all podcast services.
The irony is your face is going to be cut off in the YouTube video at this point because you're going to be out of frame.
I will be out of frame. I had to stand up. These chairs suck for so long. But with that being said, we thank you all for this episode and check us out next week.
Oh, thanks, guys. Shout out to our patrons, the Lord Corgi, Salvador Garcia, Ham and Egger, Bailey Robertson, Rob Wartpoint, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Rude Days 93, Joshua Lago, Kevin Bacon Bits, Luke Rabbit, Danny Villalobos, Solitary Red, Jehudi MD, Sean, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Constantly Kenny, Matthew Green, Sean Santarud, Steven Salazar, Shadowist, and my name is Dan. Thank you all.